Jai. Jai.
All glory to some devotees. All glory to some devotees. All glory to some devotees. All glory to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Sri Prabhupada. Screen is becoming a little stretched out here. Looking for a replacement. Three, 3, 6. We're going to read a little bit from the Shan Hare Krishna fight. That's what we're on. That's what we do. Yeah, windscreen is out. What did I say? I'll have to get another one. That's quite a garland here. So we left off, various devotees remembering their interaction with the devotees and how their parents were inimical initially and then became favorable once they saw the change in their children. That's a common occurrence. It doesn't always happen, but it happens enough. So we start here. Prabhupada, there are so many fathers and mothers who appreciate. None of our disciples are disrespectful to mother and father. Why? I have never said you become disrespectful to your father and mother. At Brahmananda's initiation, his mother was standing there, and I instructed Brahmananda, take the dust of your mother's feet first, then you offer me obeisances. So first of all, he offered his obeisances to his mother. I told him, you have got good mother, otherwise how she has got a son like you. I always say like that. I never say disrespect. In a particular case, if the father and mother are demons, he must give up their association. But we never said break up the family. Rameshwar, I think we've used up all our arguments. Prabhupada, still eager to argue. First of all, you said that we are depriving of food. Where is this? Rameshwar, yes, this is their argument, that we only let devotees eat twice a day and there is no meat and very little protein. Prabhupada, that depends on him. If he likes to eat that kind of food, you have no right to force. Then you are turning to force. There are different persons and they like different types of food. If he likes twice a day, why do you insist thrice? That is his choice. Rameshwar, sleeping only 4 or 5 hours, very little. Prabhupada, yes, because it is a waste of time. Rameshwar, but this makes his mind very weak. Prabhupada, you rascal, you have nothing to do. You sleep. Napoleon used to sleep for 1 hour, 2 hours. He was such a busy man. So they are so busy in Krishna consciousness. Every great man does not sleep very much. Sleeping is simply a waste of time. If he does not sleep more, it is a sign of greatness. When Rameshwar Swami argued that the opposition has psychologists to testify against us, Prabhupada replied, we have got our psychologists. After talking all afternoon and into the night, this is taking place on a train, so the ride is continuing. Prabhupada told the devotees to rest. At 10 p.m. he lay down and Harisari massaged his legs. Actually, Srila Prabhupada concluded, their arguments are not very sound. Therefore, it is simply a plan of Krishna's to help give us some prominence. It will make us more well known. Opposition, he said, was just an opportunity to preach. But to deal properly with the legal cases and other serious opposition, the devotees would have to know how to preach, and they would have to be spiritually strong. He was readying his men, speaking to them day and night on the 24-hour train ride to Allahabad. January 12th. They arrived at 9 a.m. and a half a dozen of Srila Prabhupada's sannyasi disciples, along with a kirtan party of about 50 devotees, were there to greet him. They had brought Prabhupada's car down from Delhi, and he rode the short distance from the station to the Mela site. Thousands of pilgrims on foot and in rickshaws crowded the streets, making Prabhupada's progress by car slow. Finally, the road ended, but the traffic continued onto the sandy flats surrounding the Triveni. Here, within a few days, a city of tents had sprung up. 2 million had camped already, with millions more arriving daily. Every spiritual group in India had its bamboo-fenced compound of tents. As the car inched along, Prabhupada smiled to see a group of his disciples strolling among the camps and performing Harinam Kirtan. But not until he passed through the congested main area of camps to the far end of the Triveni did he reach the ISKCON camp. The ISKCON tents, most of which had been erected about a half an hour before Prabhupada's arrival, were located near a railway bridge on an island called Ganga Dweep, and the Triveni bathing area was a 20-minute walk away. The festival organizers had provided a simple outdoor toilets, water taps, and a kitchen consisting of cloth partition, a hole in the ground, and some bricks. It was, as Srila Prabhupada had expected, the usual Kumbh Mela austerity, but he was displeased with the camp's remote location. And when he heard that the electric lines did not reach their area, he became even more displeased. How could people come to the program in the evening if there were no lights? He called for Bhagavat and Guru Das, who were in charge of organizing the ISKCON camp. Who has got this land? He yelled. When I got here, said Bhagavat, it was an empty field. They told me, we are putting you on this island. The governor is there. Kalpatri Maharaj is there. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi is there. I thought you were there with all the leading personalities. Srila Prabhupada laughed. You are inexperienced, so they cheated you. All right, you did not know. But later, when he heard that Bhagavat and Guru Das had not obtained enough food for mass distribution, he became angry. Again he called for Bhagavat. Why is there no prasadam distribution tonight, he demanded. Well, Prabhupada, Bhagavat stuttered, I don't know. They didn't buy any food. Why have they not bought? Prabhupada was angry. What is the matter with you? You Americans are big spenders, simply wasting money. You have no stock of food? Why you do not stock rice, dal, and wheat? Why you have no stock? What is the matter with you? You have no brain? You spend 5 rupees cab fare, going 5 rupees cab fare, coming back, and you buy 1 rupee of rice. This is your mentality. You are nonsense. Every time you need something, you go to the store and buy it. You don't know how to buy sufficiently one time and then use it. You cannot think like that. And why have you made this location under the elevated train? Why have you done this wrong? The train is making noise. This pandal is a failure. Food is not being distributed. After 20 minutes of reprimanding, Prabhupada dismissed Bhagavat. What nectar, huh? Be chastised for Srila Prabhupada for 20 minutes. A little later, Prabhupada called for Bhagavat again. Bhagavat Maharaji began, although Bhagavat was not a sannyasi at that time. If you can just get the lights on, then you will be doing good. Can you do that? Bhagavat said he could, and by that night, the ISKCON camp had lights. Although, as at all the other camps, the power was frequently shut off. Only a few people visited the ISKCON Pandal the first night. The weather was cold, damp, and windy. Srila Prabhupada chose to sit up all night at his desk rather than lie in a cold bed. Wearing all his clothes, sweaters, a hooded coat, a chadar, and gloves, he sat at his desk in the darkness. A kerosene heater did little to drive the chill from the tent. Rameshwar Swami sat up much of the night too, relighting the heater's pilot light, which blew out every few minutes as the wind swept through the tent. By morning, Srila Prabhupada had a bad cold with runny nose and eyes. He did not go to the river for bathing, but used the icy water from the pump next to his tent. His hands and feet were swollen, something that had happened to him before during illness. When the devotees suggested he not stay at the camp, Prabhupada insisted he wanted to preach. People were beginning to discover his location and come to see him, so he wanted to stay and preach. Kumbh Mela, he said, was an opportunity for the devotees to preach, not merely to bathe in the Ganga. The devotees crowded into Srila Prabhupada's tent for Guru Puja, and sometimes we're complaining that conditions are not nice, too cold, too hot, this or that, the other thing. Here's Srila Prabhupada in 1977. This is 1977. In the coldest months, you know, and Prabhupada is there to preach. The devotees crowded into Srila Prabhupada's tent for Guru Puja and Srimad Bhagavatam class. They had no garland for him, but he said nothing about it. By the time he had ended his short lecture, the sun had risen. He asked Harisari to put the cot outdoors, where he rested and later took his massage in the sunshine. During his massage, Prabhupada looked over at the railroad bridge and said that he remembered this bridge from his former days in Allahabad. He said his father had been cremated under the bridge on the same island of Gangadweep in 1930. That afternoon, a group of devotees arrived from Mayapur, and some of them immediately complained to Prabhupada about how poorly managed the ISKCON Pandal seemed to be. Prabhupada asked them to try to salvage the program by distributing as many books as possible. So the devotees began distributing Hindi editions of Prabhupada's books. This is the main thing. All right, we'll leave off here. And this is volume 6, if anyone wants to read on their own. Chant Hare Krishna and fight. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 3rd Chapter, Text 6. Chapter titled The Lord's Pastimes Out of Vrindavan. Sutang mridekam vapusha grasantang. Sutang mridekam vapusha grasantang. Drisva suna bon matitam daritriyam. Drisva suna bon matitam daritriyam. Amantritastat tanayaya sesang. Amantritastat tanayaya sesang. Dadva tarantak purama vishesha. Dadva tarantak puram abhishesha. Sutang mridekang vapusha grasantang. Drisva sunabhon mahitang daritrya. Amantritastat tanayaya sesang. Dadva tarantak purama vivesha. Please chant. Kambupcha Vishantang. Drisvachana bon matitang daritrya. Amantritastat tanayaya sheshang. Dadva tarantak purama vivesha. Sutang mridekang vapusha grasantang. Drisvasana bon matitang daritrya. Amantritastat tanayaya sheshang. Dadva tarantak purama vivesha. Ladies. Sutang mridekang vapusha grasantam. Drisva sunabon matitang daritrya. Amantritastat tanayaya sheshang. Dadva tarantak purama vivesha. Sutam, sun, mride, in the fight. Kam, the sky. Vapusha, by his body. Grasantam, while devouring. Dristva, seeing. Sunava, by the Sudarshan wheel. Unmatitam, killed. Daritrya, by the earth. Amantrita, being prayed for. Tatanayaya, to the son of Narakasura. Sheshang, that which was taken from. Dadva, returning it. Tat, his. Antakpuram, inside the house, Avivesha, entered. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Narakasura, the son of Daritri, the earth, tried to grasp the whole sky, and for this he was killed by the Lord in a fight. His mother then prayed to the Lord. This led to the return of the kingdom to the son of Narakasura, and thus the Lord entered the house of the demon. Purport. It is said in other Puranas that Narakasura was the son of Daritri, the earth, by the Lord himself. But he became a demon due to the bad association of Bana, another demon. An atheist is called a demon, and it is a fact that even a person born of good parents can turn into a demon by bad association. Birth is not always the criterion of goodness. Unless and until one is trained in the culture of good association, one cannot become good. Om Jnanatam Nandasya Gananjana Shakaya Chakshur Amnutamina Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Mukkam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lankayate Gurum Yat Kipatabham Bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. I was remembering one lecture in Mayapur, Prabhupada was saying how it was important that the devotees chant these shlokas. He said that these are Vedic mantras. He said, so in the back of almost all of Prabhupada's books, in Srimad Bhagavatam, in this volume, on page 771, is a Sanskrit pronunciation guide. So everyone should take the time to look at the guide, because it tells you how to pronounce certain, there's the vowels, consonants, cerebrals, palatals, dentals, all these different component parts of these verses so that you can follow along nicely, because a lot of these words are compound words and they require you to understand how they're connected, what the individual, so sometimes it looks like a word may not appear to be something that it sounds like, so that's, it's a common thing, like mride. You have to know that the R with a dot is pronounced as R-I. So this way you know it's mride. Or that an N, an M with the visarga on top is pronounced as NG. So kang, so it's like hangsa. So not hamsa, it's hangsa. So the swan is hangsa. But people say hamsa, but it's hangsa. NG. So this, of course, this chapter, Lord's Pastimes out of Vrindavan, everything is there elaborated in 10th Canto Srimad Bhagavatam, which we have the summary study as Krishna book, which everyone should be reading at night, right, for 10 minutes. This is important. So there's, in this particular pastime, we don't want to go too far ahead, but when Krishna enters the home of Narakasura, castle, and the description in Krishna book is quite elaborate, so it's worth it to take the time to go and read this after we're discussing this, because this is just a very short. It describes how it was completely fortified, like you'd expect. Huge fortresses on each direction with moats. You know what a moat is? Water surrounding a castle. Okay? He had moats, he had barbed wire, he had electric fences. And all these things were just completely destroyed by the Lord with his various weapons. But it's interesting how the description is there. People think that, you're reading Krishna book, this is 5,000 years ago, and people are fighting with bows and arrows. They don't understand that these arrows are surcharged with magical properties, that they're transcendently infused, which something that cannot be done now. so that they had arrows up to the potency of the atomic bomb, the Brahmastra. So when we read these things, we read them with a more complete background, after having studied. And this is why people who haven't studied the Vedas, they can't appreciate the completeness and the complexity. And they treat it as Prabhupada would say, mythology, which we had to study in school. And in an attempt to understand various cultures, they have the background of their demigods and goddesses, just like now it's common in the various cinema houses to produce these things like Hercules and Thor and all these other Zeus and various Greek and Roman and Norse gods. Right? And they bring them to life. And they all have superpowers. But what they don't understand that all these types of personalities, like Lord Indra, the wielder of the thunderbolt, he's actually the wielder of the thunderbolt, right? Not Zeus. But all these things are all conflated and mixed up because the Greeks picked up, like, they called Krishna Heracles. And so from Heracles you get Hercules, a very powerful personality. But, this nowadays it's just completely misunderstood, and it became part of some other culture, the Greek culture, instead of the Vedic culture. So in this way, it pays to have a little background so that when you're speaking to someone, you can speak with authority, like Prabhupada is saying, to preach. Not just that I know these things are there in Prabhupada's books, actually. Yeah? And in various other parts of that. But what's most important is that we're reading Srila Prabhupada's books for the preaching and studying and setting to memory certain essential verses which are useful not just for preaching to others, but also for giving one's own faith a firm foundation from which to speak with confidence. Right? There's nishta. Right? Utsaha nishchayat daryat. So utsaha, enthusiasm, confidence, firm faith, patience. All these things have to be there together, not just one or the other. Someone can have a lot of enthusiasm, but what if that enthusiasm is not based on firm faith? Then it is not. It's just like the enthusiasm of a jumping dog. It doesn't have any meaning. You see so many excitable, enthusiastic animals. They have no, or a monkey. They do so many crazy things, but there's no value to that enthusiasm. But the devotee is enthusiastic to dance and chant and kirtan because it's surcharged with the spiritual sentiment that springs from the reservoir of pleasure, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're tapping into that. So this is one of the benefits of being in close association with the deity and the devotees. It is not just that we live in the temple because it's convenient and because we've renounced the world, so to speak, or we want to hide and seclude ourselves, sequester ourselves because we're afraid. People think like that. These monks, they have to live in the temple because they can't cope in the material world. They're not competent. But this is not, this is a misconception. There may be some neophytes who come to the temple who are very young, who may not have the experience in the material world. They may not have had the opportunity to be kicked by Maya so much, but that's not a defect. In one sense, they have it much better because there's a certain level of innocence that allows them to accept without skepticism, so that their neophyte faith can become firm in the association of older devotees, the association that is so beneficial, because without that ability to question, just like we see in the Gita. What is that? What's that verse? Tadvidi. That's one. That's unfortunately not the one I was thinking of, but it's good. Just try to learn the truth by approaching the spiritual master, inquire submissively, and render service unto him. Yeah, yeah, that's the right one. See, we have to remember all these verses. What is that? This is a good lesson. And when we used to memorize these shlokas, you have to use it or lose it. So that's why when you're going out and you're memorizing these verses, you have to use them. Otherwise, they'll fade into your memory and be replaced by some other memory. So we have the opportunity to inquire submissively from the spiritual master, from the older devotees, from those who have experience in various ways, engaging in devotional service. So this, of course, this particular purport is also significant because, what does it say? Even a person born of good parents can turn into a demon. And we see that, well, we see it everywhere in the material world, but we also see it, in the families of aristocratic or devotional families, that it's not a matter of birth. Chaturvarnamaya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasaha. The caste system in India is broken down or broken up into these 4 categories: Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. And Prabhupada comments frequently that it's not that if one takes birth in a Brahmin family that automatically he's a Brahmin. He is, by birth, considered as such. But if he doesn't develop the qualities of a Brahmin, then he is not actually a Brahmin. Atak pumbir dvija shreshta vanashama vibhagasaha sanustatasya dharmasya sangsiddhir haritoshanam. Says, regardless of whether one takes birth in a Brahmin family or not, it doesn't matter. If he doesn't engage himself in Krishna service, he doesn't satisfy Krishna, sangsiddhir haritoshanam, then it is all useless. It doesn't count. Prabhupada gives the example that the son of a doctor or the son of a judge, they don't automatically become a doctor or a judge. They have to qualify themselves. So it is the same. It's not that simply by being born in a good family that one is automatically good. He has everything. He has all facility. The common term is born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Right? Obviously that indicates that there's some wealth there, that he doesn't have to struggle. So this is beneficial. One takes birth like this, Suchinam Srimatam Gehe, just so that he has an opportunity to concentrate on Krishna consciousness. He doesn't have to struggle. You see, sometimes a person has to struggle so much just to eat. They have to beg in the streets. In Bombay, we would drive around, go for life membership preaching. Or sometimes, for various things. Sometimes I would be driving with Sridhar Swami, my godbrother. And Sridhar Swami could speak fluent Hindi. At that time I was not speaking very well. And we would stop, and I would be driving. And Bombay is not a pleasant place to drive. You really have to concentrate. But we'd be stopped in traffic or pull up, and beggars would come up. Mostly lepers or those pretending to be lepers. And it's interesting how they do that. Everybody has their trick. So these young kids, and there's whole families, and this is all they do is beg. That's their livelihood. And these families send their children out to beg. Why? Because the children evoke some sympathy, right? So they take, I don't want anybody utilizing these techniques for Sankirtan or anything like that, okay? They take a pomegranate. Everybody know what a pomegranate is? When we were kids, they used to be called Chinese apples. Can't say that anymore. That's not politically correct. And they take the pomegranate. You know, pomegranate skin is red and has the juice. So they take the white bandage cloth, which is very cheap in the store. They crush the juice and they put the rind of the pomegranate over the fist, so it looks like a nub. And then the pomegranate juice, they stain the bandage, so it looks like blood. So they come up to the cars and they stick this, what looks like a bloody nub in your face, but it's actually just a pomegranate. Made to look like a bloody nub. They're excellent actors, actually. And they're like this and they're this. They go, Bakshish Baba means give us, some donation. Bakshish means. Sridhar Maharaj very nonchalantly, he would just smile at him and say, Bakshish, Ham sannyasi. It means I'm a sannyasi. You have to give me bakshish. And once he said it, they didn't know what to do. And he always ended up getting some coin from them. They'd reach into their little whatever their coin and give them the small coins, paisa, it's worthless. But the point is, they came to him asking, and they ended up giving to him. Because he could turn around. You have to give to the sannyasi. So anyway, these things are there. And we don't know what type of family these children are coming. And obviously they're beggars on the street. Can't be very good. But even that beggar on the street, he becomes in contact with Krishna consciousness. And many, many in India came in this condition to ISKCON and prospered. Hopefully their spiritual prosperity will overcome their desire for material prosperity. Because that happens sometimes if a person comes from a disadvantaged situation. Moving into an ashram is actually a step up in life. Whereas in the American place like that, technically it's considered a step down. Most of us come from situations where we have no need for anything, no want. Everyone, just like Prabhupada's first disciples, all coming from well-to-do families. But Prabhupada was giving them something much more valuable than the material wealth. So one has to appreciate that. And when he appreciates that, then it has some benefit to him. It has an effect. If you take it for granted, then Krishna sees everything. Your attitude and your interaction, whether or not a person is sincere. And he commonly said that sincerity is the only requirement for success in spiritual life. Sincerity. He didn't say academic acumen, some particular educational qualification. No. He said sincerity, because ultimately everything is coming from Krishna in any case. Right? Sarvasya chaham hridhi sanivishtam taksmati gyanam apavanam cha. It's coming from the heart. So that's why we emphasize cleansing the heart. And how does one cleanse the heart? By devotional practices. By devotional practices. Chaita darpana marjanam bhava mahadavadi nirvapanam. So therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu put this verse first. First instruction. So this, and so therefore, there's no better place to engage in devotional service than in a temple. You know, one can engage to some extent at home. You know, it's there. One has his deity worship. That's devotional service. But the temple is considered to be the home of the spiritual master. And therefore one has that humble interaction, which is where one receives the most benefit, right? That's the pariprashnena, the try to learn the truth by approaching spiritual master. Render service, inquire submissively, render service. So this is a formula. It's just like 2 + 2 = 4. You can try to adjust the formula, but you may not get everything correct in the equation. It becomes much more complex than just 2 + 2 = 4. Sometimes in the movies you see a mathematical equation that takes up an entire wall. And if one thing is wrong, everything else is wrong after that. You know, and they use that. And you show the guy, he's working for hours, days, months, weeks, years, lifetimes on this huge equation. Right? So what to speak of this so-called material, mathematical reflection of some abstract concept, which is there in nature by the perfect brain of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and everyone is struggling. But devotional service is like that. People wonder, why is one person successful and another person not successful? If it's the same in every situation, under every circumstance, why does one person seem to advance more rapidly and another person seem to kind of be on a plateau, get to a certain point, right? Of course, the nectar of instruction gives us that. Utsaha nishchaya dayat tat tat karma pavartanat. Right? Jana sangha, you know, we have to avoid certain things. Besides the enthusiasm, firm conviction, patience, one has to avoid worldly association, worldly mind association. Those 3 things, you know, those 6 points there. And so Prabhupada emphasizes nectar of instruction. He actually stopped all other translation work to concentrate on the nectar of instruction in 1975, because at that time the movement was experiencing rapid expansion. And sometimes when things expand rapidly, like a business, they become weak. They become overextended. Resources become sparse or scarce. And this is common in any situation. When you overextend, basically you fail. So the whole movement needed to be on a firm footing of the spiritual instruction by Srila Rupa Goswami. And Prabhupada had given nectar of devotion already. Everything is also there. But nectar instruction is very condensed, compact, easy to understand, commit to memory, and practice. And if one does that, then practically speaking, he'll have success in spiritual life. It's really a simple formula. Atyahara priyasascha prajapa niyamagara. So, eating too much, over-collecting, following the rules and regulations without knowing why, or following them, or not following them. So all these things are there for us to try to observe in ourselves and others, because we're all meant to help each other as well. It's not that we see a person having difficulty in spiritual life and we say, well, that's his problem. No, why is it his problem? Someone who's come to spiritual life, this means he's come to serve Krishna. We don't neglect that our fellow devotee out of some callousness, or this also shows that one has not developed a proper sense of compassion. Compassion is to help, because at a certain point a person may reject all assistance. He may run away, or he may become offensive. At that point, of course, we have to cease, because you don't want to have that person commit offenses. That we don't. That's a different thing. But generally, if one has a friendly relationship, then that friendly relationship will allow this dadati pratigrinati goyamakyati prachiti, this exchange, revealing one's mind. Because this is also part of that. So all these things are there. We just have to put them in place and practice them. And so it's not that I'm using someone as something to practice on, but these things occur. And when they occur, one should be ready to act, just like if one is on the battlefield, everyone has a certain rating, or they call it MOS, Military Occupation Specialty, designation. It says whether you're an infantryman, or an artilleryman, or an intelligence man, or whatever. All these things are theirs. They also have a medic, someone who's there when all the other persons, when someone becomes injured or wounded, the medic takes care of them. So everyone should have that capacity, how to help another person in devotional life. Everyone is a medic in Krishna consciousness. That's our designation. Prabhupada, one time when my godbrother, he was inquiring from Srila Prabhupada that whether or not he should continue his studies to become a doctor. And Prabhupada said, there are enough doctors. You become a spiritual doctor. So this is much more valuable than if you have the compassion and if you have the knowledge and a person is struggling and you can say the right words to give him solace in his time of need, then that is a very great service to prevent a person from going back out into the material world just because of some momentary weakness. You give him an infusion of Krishna consciousness. Just like on the battlefield, they give you a blood infusion, a plasma infusion, some. So all these things have their analogies. So being a devotee is not just unidimensional. It's not just one dimension. It's multifaceted. You have to become multifaceted. You have to be able to do many things. So what did Prabhupada say? Cooking, kirtan, and preaching. These are every brahmachari should know how to do these three things. So if you don't know how to cook, you need to learn. You need to practice. And kirtan is second nature for most devotees, very easily. And preaching also. But why cooking? Because cooking is also preaching. You see, Prabhupada is furious at Bhagavat Maharaj and Guru Das That why are they having enough food? Because there's not enough food to cook means a whole aspect of preaching is being neglected. Prabhupada said, prasadam is our secret weapon. So you can understand why Prabhupada is angry. Prasadam attracts people and captures them. Jiva, with the tongue. So all these things we have to keep in mind, that what it means to be a devotee is not just that I dress a certain way, or I look a certain way, or I do kirtan a certain way. No, a devotee is your identity. You have to relate to that full time. That's your primary. It's not that I think I'm a devotee for some profit, distinction, adoration. No, it's just that I have to always have that. I'm a devotee, I'm a disciple. On behalf of my spiritual master, on behalf of the Supreme Lord, on behalf of their mission, the mission of Lord Chaitanya, the mission of the founder Acharya and his bona fide representatives. So, this is why we dress the way we dress, and put on tilak, and keep our flag, our shika, like that, so that we retain that identification, regardless of our circumstances and situation. Always remember it. It's just like the uniform of the policeman. When the policeman is wearing his uniform, he knows he's on duty. Can't smoke a cigarette, can't go in the bar and have a drink. No, because he knows I'm on duty. So the devotee is always on duty. He's always on duty. He's always thinking, I can't disrespect the uniform of the Vaishnava Sampradaya by engaging in some activity which will bring disrepute. Prabhupada is very keen on reputation. Matter of fact, all businesses, reputational value is the single most important component of any company. If a company has a bad reputation, then it's finished. It can't exist. Everything is reputation. So by Prabhupada's emphasis on maintaining proper behavior, right? This is called sadachara, proper behavior. We were reading in Chaitanya Charitamrita downstairs about sadachara. That will keep the movement strong, right? Purity is the force. And as long as we're connected in that regard, then we'll also reap the benefit of that momentum, of that content. So even though Nata Bhargaranga is not here looking at his watch, I know it's time to take questions and finish up. Any questions, comments? Yes, Balaram?
So you were talking about different mythologies in the beginning. So like there's the whole world, there's all these different mythologies.
Sure.
So
the Marvel universe.
Yeah. So is there any truth to any of them? But only ours is true, or is there any truth to those?
No, all of theirs is a reflection of the Vedic truth, just watered down. They lost the connection. See, just like it says that, what's that verse, Ramon? Evam parampara praptim imam rajasyo viduhu. That this supreme science is thus understood by the saintly kings in a chain of disciplic succession, or the chain of disciplic succession, the saintly kings understood it in that way. But the science as it is appears to be lost. Why? Due to time. Time is the destroyer. So in the same way, all the original Vedic literature was first orally transmitted, right? It was not written down. Before Kali Yuga, there was no need. It's like Krishna, when he went to the ashram of Sandipani Muni, he heard the Vedas one time. That's it. Just one time. And understood them completely, just by hearing them once. And so, but that's not the way it worked, so all these histories of Krishna, all his pastimes, they were there. And certain Greek travelers went there, certain other travelers went there, certain Chinese, and they took back what they'd heard, and it became incorporated into their own cultural fabric. And so lost its connection with the Vedic literature. And it became, just like nowadays. Nowadays we have traditions of Christmas in the Christian philosophy. There is no Christmas. Christmas is not the birth of Christ. Christmas, the trappings you associate with Christmas, the tree and all these things, those are pagan trappings from as the various armies marched west towards Europe. Christianity came with them, but the pagans didn't give up their traditions. So they incorporated them into Christianity. Right? There's no Easter bunny in the Christian faith. Doesn't exist. But Easter itself, the so-called, rising of Christ, that's part of that tradition. But how did the bunny get connected? That's, So all these things get mixed up. But we're fortunate because we have the original. See, this is the key. No one is as fortunate as us. We're reading directly the Vedas by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. Remember what it's saying? He stayed up all night at his desk, at his table. All night. And he would hardly sleep. 2 hours in a day and 2 hours at night. Maximum 4 hours in a day, Prabhupada slept. Maximum. All the rest of the time was preaching. Like that. So we have to use these bodies in Krishna service. And automatically, when you do that, Krishna uses you. He allows you to become an instrument. Nimitta matram bhava savyasachin. He allows you to become an instrument. There's a great honor that Krishna uses you. Some people in the material world, if someone's being used by another person, that's not a very nice thing. Right? Nobody feels good about being used. Right? You hear about it in so many different ways. But in Krishna consciousness, that's all we're aspiring to, is to be used by the Lord for His purpose, to become His servant. Servant in the material world is not a very great position, so to speak. Right? People don't want to do anything. They want to elevate themselves to become the master. They don't want to be the servant. So anyway, that's mythology. So now you should make a Vedic world, no Marvel universe, a Vedic universe. They're trying in various little ways. It doesn't work. But, more and more we'll see as Krishna consciousness influences more and more. Any other questions, comments? Yes, Krishna.
It's a comment about when you said prasadam was a weapon. So,
Prasadam was a secret weapon, yes.
Yeah, it's a mini story for myself. So I was making noodles by myself. It was the first time I made noodles. I did everything it said on the packet. I put it in the pot. I put the masalas and everything. I made it, and then I put a plate for myself, and I ate it. It was disgusting since it was the first time I made it. Absolutely disgusting. But then I forgot to offer it as prasadam to Krishna. And so I took another clean plate, I put it in like a little tray, offered it to Krishna, waited for some time for him to eat it and everything. And then I set the plate for myself. I didn't change it at all. I did the same thing as in the packets. And so I ate it. And after I ate it, was just the most beautiful noodles ever ate in my life.
See that? Now you have to give us the recipe. We're looking forward to it. Cooking, kirtan, and preaching is very important. Every brahmachari, every devotee. Cooking, kirtan, and preaching. Any other questions or comments? All right, we're almost on time. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, the Lord's pastimes out of Vrindavan ki.